The florist was still pinning the last white rose to the arch when my phone buzzed for the third time in 20 minutes. I silenced it without looking and told myself Derek was probably stuck in traffic. That was the reasonable explanation. That was the one I was going to believe until I had absolutely no choice but to believe something else. My best friend kept fussing with the back of my dress, pulling at the satin the way she always did when she was nervous but didn't want to say so. The rooftop of the Alderton Hotel was decorated exactly the way I had dreamed it, string lights running the length of every railing, white peonies in tall glass vases, about 90 people sitting in ivory chairs looking down at their programs. My mother was in the front row with a handkerchief already in her hand. She cried at everything. I loved her for it. This was not our wedding. I want to be clear about that. This was our engagement party, the formal one Derek had insisted on, the one where both families would officially meet and we would make the announcement in front of everyone who mattered. Derek had planned it. Derek had chosen the venue, negotiated the catering package, picked the date. It was supposed to be his grand gesture, the thing that proved he was serious, after 3 years of me wondering, quietly, in the back of my mind, whether he ever would be. My phone buzzed again. "Read it," my best friend said, and her voice had changed enough that I finally looked at her face. I read it. "I'm sorry, Claire. I can't do this. I need time. Please don't call me." There are moments in life where the world goes very still and very loud at exactly the same time. This was one of them. I read the message 4 times. Then I read it a 5th time because some part of my brain was convinced I was misreading it, that there was another version of those words that meant something less catastrophic than what they clearly meant. There was not. "He's not coming," I said. My voice came out completely flat, which surprised me. I had expected it to shake. My best friend took the phone from my hand and read the message herself. I watched her face go through 5 different emotions in about 3 seconds. She landed on fury. "I'm going to call him," she said. "He said don't call him. I don't care what he said." She stepped away toward the corner of the rooftop terrace, already dialing, and I stood very still between the roses and the string lights and tried to decide what I was supposed to do next. 90 people were sitting in those chairs. My mother was in the front row with her handkerchief. The florist had just finished with the arch. My father appeared at the top of the stairwell. He had his hands in his pockets, and his expression was the careful one he wore when he was trying to figure out how bad something actually was before he reacted to it. "Sweetheart," he said, "people are starting to wonder. Derek isn't coming, Dad." He went very quiet. Then he came and stood beside me and put his hand on my shoulder, and he didn't say anything at all for a moment, which was the right thing to do, even though it made my eyes burn. "What do you want to do?" he finally asked. I genuinely did not know. The coordinator appeared next, clipboard in hand, headset slightly askew, the look of someone who had handled every possible wedding and event crisis except this specific one and was improvising in real time. She pulled me aside and told me, in a very professional whisper, that we had the venue for another 40 minutes before they needed to begin resetting for the dinner service. She said it gently. She said it like she was sorry, but the information was what it was. 40 minutes, 90 people, no groom. I walked to the edge of the terrace and looked out over the city. Chicago in October, all that amber and gray, the lake just visible between the buildings. I had moved here 6 years ago for a teaching position at a private elementary school, and I had stayed because the city felt like mine in a way no place had before. I was standing on a rooftop in a dress I had spent 4 months paying off, and the man I had said yes to was somewhere below sending text messages and asking me not to call him. "Claire." I turned around. My boss was standing at the top of the stairwell. I should explain something about my boss. His name was Nathan, and he was the executive director of the Hargrove Foundation, which funded and oversaw the private school where I taught. He was 39 years old, which I knew because I had helped organize the foundation's staff directory the previous spring. He had attended this event because the foundation's annual charity gala was held at this same hotel, and he had a standing relationship with the events team here, and my colleague had thought it would be meaningful, political, really to invite him as a sign of goodwill between the school staff and the administration. He and I had spoken perhaps 40 times in the 2 years I had worked there. He knew my name. He asked about my classroom every time the foundation held a staff meeting. He had once stopped by my room after hours and stood in the doorway for a long moment, looking at the student artwork on the walls before saying, quietly, that he thought it was the best classroom in the building. I had thought about that comment more than was probably professional. He was wearing a dark navy suit and he looked like he had been in a conversation downstairs when someone told him something was wrong, because his expression had the particular quality of a person who has received unexpected information and is recalibrating. "I heard," he said, walking toward me. "Not the whole sentence, just those 2 words." "Who told you?" "The coordinator. She was looking for someone on staff." He stopped a few feet away and looked at me with the kind of directness that usually made me feel like I needed to justify myself. Right now it just felt like steadiness. "Are you all right?" "No," I said, because lying seemed like too much effort. He nodded slowly. He looked out at the terrace, at the chairs, at the people beginning to shift and whisper to each other. Then he looked back at me. "What are you going to do?" "I have no idea." He was quiet for a moment. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket, and what he pulled out stopped me completely. It was a ring box, small, square, dark blue velvet, the kind of box that could only contain one thing. I stared at it. "I've been carrying this for 11 days, he said. He wasn't looking at me now. He was looking at the box. I keep telling myself I'm waiting for the right moment, and then I convince myself there isn't one. And now I'm standing on a rooftop watching you try to figure out how to tell 90 people that the man they came to celebrate just walked away from you by text message." The string lights hummed softly in the October wind. "Nathan, I'm not proposing to you," he said quickly, and then almost laughed at himself. "That came out wrong. What I mean is I'm not asking you anything right now. That wouldn't be right, and I know that." He looked at me then. "But I need you to know that I've had this in my pocket for 11 days. Because I want you to know that whatever this moment feels like, you are someone a person thinks about for 11 days before working up the nerve to say anything. Whatever he made you feel tonight, that's not you, Claire. That's him." I didn't say anything. I couldn't. There was a pressure behind my sternum that I couldn't quite name. "What do I do about the people downstairs?" I asked finally, because that was the immediate problem and the one I could actually think about without my chest collapsing. He was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. "Let me go down first," he said. "Give me 2 minutes." "What are you going to do?" He put the ring box back in his pocket and straightened his jacket. "Something that will either help or make this considerably more complicated," he said. "I'll aim for the first one." He turned and walked back toward the stairwell, and I stood there between the roses and the string lights in the October wind with my heart doing something entirely unreasonable in my chest. My best friend reappeared at my elbow. She had given up on reaching Derek. Her expression was the particular one she wore when she was 3 seconds from saying something that would make a situation either much better or much worse. "Who was that?" she asked, watching Nathan disappear through the door. "My boss." She looked at the stairwell door. She looked at me. "Claire," she said slowly, "why does your boss look at you like that?" I didn't answer because I didn't have a good one, and also because I needed to figure out what like that meant exactly, though some part of me suspected I already knew. 2 minutes passed. My father came back and stood beside me. My best friend held my hand. The coordinator hovered near the arch, looking at her clipboard with the focus of someone who was not looking at her clipboard. Then my mother turned around from the front row, found me at the back of the terrace, and gave me a small nod. The kind of nod that meant something had happened and she wasn't sure what, but it had changed the temperature of the room. We walked down. The terrace had been reconfigured slightly, the chairs shifted, the small podium that had been set up for the announcement moved to the side. Nathan was standing near the bar, speaking to 2 men I recognized as being from Derek's side of the guest list, Derek's uncle and his college roommate, and whatever Nathan was saying, both men were listening to him with the kind of attention people give when someone is being unexpectedly direct and they don't quite know what to do with it. He saw me come in. He excused himself from the conversation and crossed the room. "Derek's family knows," he said quietly. "I told them first. I thought it was better coming from someone outside it." I looked at Derek's uncle, who met my eyes across the room and gave me a look of complicated sympathy. He was a good man. He had always been a good man. That made it worse. Somehow. "What did you tell the room?" I asked. "That there was a change in the evening's plan and that you had something you'd like to say." "I don't have anything I'd like to say." "I know," he said. "But they'd rather hear from you than from speculation." He paused. "You don't have to explain anything. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Just let them see you're standing." I looked out at the room. 90 people, my mother with her handkerchief. Derek's family on one side, mine on the other, both sets looking at me with the specific concern of people who love someone and cannot fix what has happened to them. My colleagues from the school were near the window. My neighbor, who had driven 2 hours to be here. The florist, who had finished her work and didn't know what to do with herself. I walked to the center of the room. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said. My voice was steadier than I had any right to expect. "I know this isn't what any of us planned. Derek won't be joining us this evening." I paused. "I don't have a full explanation for you right now, and I'm not going to pretend I do. What I can tell you is that I'm grateful every single one of you is here. Not because of the occasion, but because of you." The room was very quiet. "The food is still coming," I added, "and the bar is open. And I would genuinely love to spend the next 2 hours with the people I love most in the world, even if the reason we're gathered isn't what we thought it was going to be." Something shifted in the room. I can't fully describe it. It was the collective exhale of 90 people deciding simultaneously that if I was going to be all right, they were going to help me be all right. My mother stood up first. She crossed the room and hugged me without saying a word. And then my aunt came, and then my colleague from the 3rd grade classroom, and then Derek's uncle, who shook my hand very formally and said he was sorry, and I believed him. Nathan stayed at the edge of the room all evening. He talked to people, refilled his water glass twice, laughed at something my father said near the window. He didn't hover near me or make a point of staying close. He just stayed. There's a difference. And I noticed it. At one point, I found myself next to him at the bar waiting for a glass of sparkling water, and I said, quietly, so only he could hear, "You knew something was off." Before tonight, he was quiet for a moment. "I saw him at the Alderton bar last Tuesday," he said, "with someone. I didn't know what it meant." Another pause. I should have said something. "It wasn't your responsibility." "Maybe not." He looked at his glass. I still thought about it every day after that. I thought about a ring box in an inner pocket. 11 days. "Why Tuesday?" I asked. He looked at me. "You said you'd been carrying it for 11 days. That's Tuesday." He held my gaze for a long moment. "Yes," he said finally. "That's Tuesday." The party wound down the way things do when everyone is making the best of a situation gently, with effort, with more genuine warmth than any perfectly executed event could have produced. My mother helped me carry the centerpiece flowers to the elevator. My best friend took charge of the gift table and handled it with the efficiency of someone who was channeling her anger into logistics. Derek's college roommate found me before he left and said, without elaborating, that he was sorry and that Derek had been making poor choices for a while and that he hoped I'd be okay. I thanked him. I meant it. Nathan was the last to leave, or nearly the last. My best friend had gone to bring the car around. My father was downstairs settling something with the coordinator. I was standing near the arch the florist had offered to let me keep the flowers, and I was trying to figure out the logistics of getting them home when Nathan came to say goodbye. "You did well tonight," he said. "I don't feel like I did anything. You stood up in front of 90 people on the worst night of the year, and you were great and honest, and you didn't fall apart." He looked at me steadily. "That's not nothing." "Claire," I looked at him. There was something I needed to say, and I wasn't sure I had the courage for it, and then I thought about how tired I was of not having courage for things. "The ring," I said. He waited. "Not tonight," I said. "And not because of tonight, because I need time to understand what tonight actually was. But I need you to know that I heard what you said. All of it." I paused. "And I need you to not put it back on a shelf somewhere and pretend you didn't say it." He was quiet for a moment. "I won't," he said. "Good." My best friend appeared at the top of the stairs with the specific expression she wore when she was pretending she hadn't been listening from 3 feet away. She held out my coat. Nathan said goodnight and went back down the stairs, and my best friend waited exactly 4 seconds before turning to me with both eyebrows at their maximum elevation. "That man," she said, "has been in love with you for longer than 11 days. "I know," I said. "And you knew before tonight." I looked at the arch with its white peonies, the string lights still humming in the wind off the lake. "I think I knew," I said. "I just wasn't letting myself know it." She handed me the coat. "Derek did you a favor?" she said. "Not kindly. The way you say something that's true and terrible and also true." The next 3 weeks were not simple. I want to be honest about that because I think the story is worth more than the cleaned-up version. I cried twice on my classroom floor during lunch break when the kids were at recess. I sat with my phone in my hand for an hour one night trying to decide whether to reply to Derek's second message, the longer one that came 5 days after the rooftop, the one where he explained that he had met someone else 8 months ago and that he thought his feelings would change and they hadn't and he was sorry. I didn't reply. I thought about it every day for 2 weeks and I didn't reply. I saw Nathan at the monthly foundation meeting 12 days after the Alderton. He was professional and warm and asked about the autumn project my class had been working on, a citywide community mural, and I told him about it, and he listened the way he always listened, like there was nothing else requiring his attention at that moment, which I had always appreciated and now understood differently. He didn't mention the rooftop. I didn't either. There was an understanding between us that hadn't been spoken and didn't need to be. My best friend thought I was being slow. My mother thought I was being wise. I thought I was being both. It was a Tuesday. It would be a Tuesday when I came in early to rearrange my classroom before the students arrived and found a single white peony on my desk. No note. I stood in my empty classroom in the early morning quiet and looked at it for a long moment. Then I went down the hall to Nathan's office, which I had been in perhaps 6 times in 2 years, and knocked on the open door. He was at his desk with his reading glasses on, which I hadn't seen before, and the morning light from the east-facing window was doing something favorable to the whole picture, which I noted and set aside. "The flower," I said. He looked up. He didn't pretend not to know what I meant. "I've been thinking," I said, "about a lot of things. And the thing I keep coming back to is something you said on the rooftop, that I'm someone a person thinks about for 11 days before working up the nerve to say anything." I paused. "I've been thinking about you for longer than 11 days, Nathan. I just told myself I had a good reason not to say so." He took his glasses off. "I don't want to be someone's rebound," he said carefully. "That's the only thing I'm asking." "You're not," I said. "Derek didn't break my heart the way you might think. He broke my confidence. There's a difference. And a different person is fixing the second one." He looked at me for a long moment. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'd like to have dinner with you," I said. "Not a work dinner, not a foundation dinner, an actual dinner where neither of us has to talk about anything that requires a spreadsheet." He almost smiled. He was very deliberate about smiling. I had noticed that, which made each one count for more. "I know a place," he said. "Thursday?" "Thursday," I agreed. I walked back down the hall toward my classroom, and my best friend who had texted me 3 times in the last 4 minutes asking for a status update and the mural project that my students had been working on for 6 weeks, and that was going to be extraordinary. I was going to be okay. Not in the cleaned-up version where nothing hurt and everything resolved neatly, but in the real version, which was better. My phone buzzed. My best friend, "Well?" I sent back a single thumbs up. She called me immediately. I let it ring because I was smiling and I needed a moment to have that privately, and also because my students were arriving in 11 minutes and I needed to be a teacher again, which was the version of myself I had trusted longest and the one I still trusted most. The Thursday dinner was at a small Italian place near the river that had no business being as quiet and candlelit as it was for a weeknight, and Nathan had clearly been there before because the host recognized him and brought a bread basket without being asked, which I decided to take as a good sign. We talked for 3 hours. Not about the foundation, not about the school, not about Derek or the rooftop or the ring I had never actually seen outside its box. We talked about where he grew up, rural Vermont, which explained something I couldn't previously name about his quietness, and about how I had wanted to be an architect until junior year of college and pivoted to education in a semester and never questioned it. He asked about the mural project and then stopped himself and said he'd promised no work, and I said I actually wanted to talk about it. The promise was supposed to be about obligation, and so we talked about it genuinely. The way 2 people talk about something, one of them loves and the other finds newly interesting because of the love. He walked me to my car. It was cold. Mid-November now, the lake wind doing what it always did. "I should tell you," he said, "that I put the ring in my desk at home." I looked at him. "Not away," he said. "Not back in whatever it was before. Just somewhere that isn't in my pocket every day. Because I think the timing should be yours, not mine." I thought about what my best friend had said on the rooftop. That man has been in love with you for longer than 11 days. I thought about a quiet man in a doorway looking at student artwork on classroom walls and saying it was the best in the building. I thought about the particular quality of someone staying at the edge of a room all evening, not because they needed to be seen doing it, but simply because they were not leaving. "That's the right call," I said. He smiled then, not the careful version, the actual one. "Good night, Claire." "Good night, Nathan." I drove home along the lake, and the city was lit up the way it gets in the cold, sharper and brighter, the kind of beautiful that requires difficulty to arrive at. My phone sat on the passenger seat, and I didn't look at it once the whole drive home. There is a version of this story where I would tell you it all happened quickly after that the dinner led directly to the next thing and then the next, a clean line from the worst night to the best one. That would be satisfying, but it would not be true. The truth is that we had 8 Thursday dinners before he reached for my hand across a table and I let him, and another 4 before I stopped feeling a reflex of caution every time things felt too good, and it was late February on a Saturday morning, 5 months after the rooftop, when I found him at my kitchen table with coffee and the paper and the unhurried quality of a person who was entirely comfortable being exactly where he was. I looked at him from the doorway for a moment before he saw me. I thought about the fact that I had nearly spent the rest of my life not knowing this version of a Saturday morning existed. I thought about a text message that had arrived on a rooftop in October and how I had read it 5 times trying to find a better interpretation, and how what it had actually been, though I couldn't have known it then, was a door. Some doors look like endings from the inside. You only understand what they were later, from the other side, looking back. He looked up from the paper and saw me in the doorway and said, "Good morning." And I said good morning back. And I went and poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from him. And it was the most ordinary thing in the world, and I have not taken a single ordinary morning for granted since.